When I first stepped into this world, the coaching, healing, mentoring space, I fell in love with the language. It was the first time I had words that could describe what I had always felt but couldn't name. Words like sovereignty, embodiment, frequency, activation, remembrance. Those words felt like portals. They carried meaning, emotion, a kind of energetic poetry. And they made me feel connected to something bigger, like I had finally found a vocabulary for my purpose. But these past few months, something's changed for me. I started noticing that those same words, they were everywhere. Every post I read used the same rhythm, the same tone, the same new paradigm vocabulary. And I realized these words that once set people apart were starting to make everyone look and sound the same. And it wasn't that these words were bad words. It's that they had lost their resonance because they lost their context. And this is what gives words their power. And I started looking back at my own posts, and I found one that said, activate your sovereign wealth codes and embody the frequency of your next evolution. And it sounded powerful. It even sounded deep. But even I, the person who wrote it, couldn't tell you exactly what I was selling. And that's when I understood something that changed how I create and communicate. Your words can be inspiring and still not land. You can move people energetically and still not move them into taking action. And in business, within your leadership, your coaching, your service, if your words don't land, your work won't lead to an exchange. Welcome to the Purpose-Driven Millionaire Podcast. This is where we blend energy and strategy to help you build a business that feels as good as it looks. I'm your host, Connie Grant, mentor, teacher, and founder of Sanctuary 33. Each week we explore the intersection of wealth, purpose, and embodiment, and how to lead from a place of truth. And today, we're unpacking something that most of us in the spiritual and coaching space wrestle with. Why the words we love, the ones that sound elevated and wise, sometimes build a wall instead of a bridge. Because I know how this can feel. You're pouring your heart into what you create, your content, your sessions, your offers, and still your message feels like it's floating somewhere in the ethers instead of landing in the real world. You can feel the power of it, but your audience can't quite grasp it yet. And that's where we begin today, with the beauty and the seduction of spiritual language. When I first entered the world of coaching and my purpose-driven business, words like sovereignty, frequency, remembrance, and activation felt like home for me. They gave meaning to the things logic couldn't explain. They felt sacred and true to me, and they still do. In those early days, that's often how we find our voice. We borrow language that lifts us. We lean into the words that sound like they belong to the person we're becoming. And we use them because we make our work feel significant, elevated, different. But somewhere along the way, for many of us, those words stop being enough. They start to sound repetitive, and they start to sound like everyone else. They begin to sound like depth, but they rarely deliver it. This is what I call the seduction of beautiful language, because spiritual language is seductive. It sounds elevated. It sounds wise. It makes us feel like we've unlocked something that the world doesn't yet understand. And for a while, it works until we realize that people love our posts, but they don't buy. And when that happens, it's not because they don't understand energy. It's because they cannot yet connect the energy to their lived experience. They're asking, even if they don't say it out loud, what does this mean for me? How does this change my business, my day, my body, my bank account? And what does this look like when I open my laptop tomorrow morning? And it took me a year before I realized that. I wasn't being unclear because I lacked vision. I was being unclear because clarity was too simple. And this simplicity, it felt too ordinary and not spiritual enough for me. You see, I relied on beautiful words and used them as a shield, a way of staying mysterious, poetic, and even a little untouchable, because clarity feels vulnerable. It means people will finally see you and they finally understand what you do. And when people understand you, they can also decide whether they want to work with you or not. And that's powerful because it can also feel exposing. Here's a personal example. I used to write things like, activate your wealth frequency and expand into your next level of sovereign leadership. Now, it sounded powerful and it looked refined on my feed, and it even had a beautiful image. But here's what actually happened. People didn't know what I meant. They admired the post. They even liked it, but they didn't go beyond that. They didn't ask for the link or to book a call with me or to hire me. And I remember staring at my analytics thinking, but this message, it's true. It was true for me. But for them, it was beautiful and it was vague. And that's the difference between resonance and conversion. The people you're here to serve don't need more mysticism. They need translation. They need you to connect the frequency to their lived reality. And it's not that they don't understand your words, it's that they're trying to understand themselves through your words. So if you say, I help women embody their highest frequency, that sounds inspiring. But if you say, I help women simplify their business so they can make more money and still have time for their family, now that starts to land. The first one sounds like art, and the second one feels like a solution. But what if you blend both? What if you say, I help women embody their highest frequency, where their message feels magnetic, their offers sell with ease, and their business supports a life filled with calm mornings, creative freedom, and family dinners that don't feel rushed. That's where magic meets meaning. It's not about abandoning spiritual language. It's about grounding it, about pairing beauty with practicality and soul with structure. Because being clear doesn't make your work less sacred. It makes it usable. And that's what real leadership is, making the mystical accessible. So the next time you write a post or speak about your offer or record your podcast, run your words through this simple filter. Does it land? Would your client understand what you mean, not just in concept, but in their body and in their life? If yes, then your message will magnetize. If no, it's not wrong. You haven't lost your voice. You just simply haven't clarified it yet. Because clarity never erases your magic. It just amplifies it, because anyone can sound poetic. But being precise, now that's mastery. And here's something that might sound surprising to you. People don't buy because they're inspired. They buy because they understand the result it gives them. Inspiration opens the heart, but clarity opens the door. And you can write something that moves people to tears, something that gets saved, shared, and praised. But if your audience doesn't understand how it applies to their actual life or business, they're going to scroll right past it. And they're going to invest in the person who made the next step feel obvious. Now, this doesn't mean you have to write like a marketer. It means you have to write like a translator, someone who can take something sacred and make it usable, someone who can turn energy into language that creates specific outcomes. So let's take a simple example. If you say, activate your wealth frequency. Now, this sounds beautiful, but what you probably mean is, I help women stop undercharging, structure their offers clearly, and create consistent income that reflects their true value. The first one is abstract, and the second one is actionable. And when you blend the two, you get something magnetic. I help women activate their wealth frequency by owning their worth, restructuring their offers with clarity, and creating income that honors both their energy and their expertise. See how that's different? You kept the frequency, but you added context. Here's another example. If you say, I help people expand into their next level of embodiment. It sounds poetic, but what does that actually look like? Try blending it like this. I help purpose-driven leaders expand into their next level of embodiment, where their leadership feels calm, their income becomes stable, and they finally trust both their intuition and their systems. That's the balance your clients are craving. They want to feel the sacred and see the strategy. Or instead of saying, I guide people to align into their higher self, say, I guide entrepreneurs and visionaries to align with their higher self, the version of them who sets clean boundaries, values their work with confidence, and makes decisions from clarity instead of fear. That's where spiritual resonance meets real-world relevance. Because when your message gives people both, when it speaks to their soul and their mind, it lands. Your clients, they don't want to decode what you mean. They only want to see themselves in what you're saying. And that's the secret. Your language doesn't lose resonance. It just has to be specific. Because vague language, honestly, it just feels safe for us. It keeps things mystical, open, and undefinable. But for our clients, it feels like it's somewhere off in the distance. So when someone says, she's incredible, she helps women expand into their purpose, that's actually really vague. But when someone says, she helps coaches turn their wisdom into one signature offer that sells consistently, that's clarity. But when someone says she helps coaches expand into their purpose and turn their wisdom into one signature offer that sells consistently, now that becomes magnetic. That's referral language. That's what gets repeated in group chats and mastermind circles. And that's where you create your momentum. Because people, they don't refer energy alone. They refer results. And when those results are infused with energy, they'll shout them from the rooftops. When your audience understands you, they can advocate for you. And when they advocate for you, your work begins to ripple out and touch the lives of more people. So here's a reframe. When you clarify your message, you're not diluting your magic. You're making it possible for people to receive it. You're turning your energy into an invitation. You're turning your inspiration into income. And you're turning your poetry into prosperity. That's the true art of translation. Now, I want to talk about some of the most beautiful words in our industry, the ones that hold truth but have lost their meaning. Words like embodiment, frequency, sovereignty, activation, remembrance. They're overused, but that doesn't mean you should delete them from your content. They're just missing your context. See, these words are like temples, sacred spaces that hold your power. But without your substance, without lived meaning, they're just empty rooms. So when you fill them with human experience, they start to mean something again. So let's bring some of that back to earth. Embodiment. This isn't just a word that means energy and motion. It's when your actions, your message, your body are all speaking the same language. It's when you no longer just talk about ease, but you organize your calendar so it reflects it. And when you stop preaching boundaries and actually start honoring them. And when your launch plan supports your well-being instead of draining it. That's embodiment, when your business and nervous system are finally aligned. And people want to know the context of how this word, embodiment, fits into their life. So we can also take the word frequency. It's not just a vibration. It's the emotional consistency between how you speak, sell, and serve. It's when your offers feel like an extension of your integrity, when what you promise and what you deliver are the same thing. That's true frequency, not constant positivity, but congruence. And sovereignty, it's not just a word that represents power. It's ownership of your choices, your money, your message. It's raising your prices without guilt. It's saying no without apology. And it's trusting your strategy because it came from alignment, not comparing yourself to someone else. And activation, it's not just magic. It's that cellular awareness when something finally clicks and you act on it. It's when you stop tweaking your offer for the 10th time and you finally sell it. It's when you update your price, change your copy, say the no you've been avoiding. That's activation, not just a spark, but an actual shift. So when you define what these words look like in lived experience, in your clients' minds, in your clients' bodies, they don't lose their potency. They regain it. They're amplified. They're exponentialized. And you make that spiritual tangible. And you make the invisible usable. Because abstraction doesn't make you sound wiser. It just makes you sound further away. And your clients, they're not craving more mystery. They're craving more connection with you. They want to see what your words look like in their world. And they want to feel what sovereignty means when they're setting boundaries. And they want to know what embodiment looks like when they're writing a sales page. And they want to understand what frequency means when their income dips. And they want to experience activation to know what that feels like when they're repeating the same patterns. When you add that context for them, you're not just teaching, you're translating, and you're gaining a client who understands what you are bringing to them in their world in the form of results. That's how your message becomes magnetic, not because it's lofty, but because it's lived. When your message carries both resonance and clarity, something extraordinary happens. Your audience doesn't just understand your words, they feel them. And it's the moment when your frequency, it meets their logic. When the soul of your message becomes structured enough to move people into action. And this is where your artistry turns into influence. It's not about choosing between the poetic or the practical. It's about becoming fluent in both. And that's the work of true communication. That's where your energy starts converting. This is where we turn your wisdom into mastery. Because no matter how beautiful or how profound your message sounds, if it doesn't land, it won't lead. And here's the truth that most people will avoid. Your energy magnetizes attention. Your clarity, though, it sustains it. So when you speak only in energy, people will feel you, but they don't know what to do next. And when you speak only in clarity, people will understand you, but they don't feel your depth. But when you blend the two, when your clarity carries the charge of your energy, your message just becomes irresistible. It becomes undeniable. And that's the calibration. That's where your words hold power. And here's the framework I teach inside my mentorships, a filter I use for everything I publish, from podcast scripts to offers. It's simple, but it refines everything you say. Before you share anything, a post, an email, a launch page, ask yourself these 5 questions. Would someone outside of my world understand this instantly? Can they visualize what this looks like in their everyday life? Does it sound like something they want, not something that they have to decode? Is it both aspirational and actionable? Am I using this word to sound wise or to speak truth clearly? If you can answer yes to all 5, your message doesn't just sound aligned, it feels embodied. And if there's a no to some of these questions, don't panic. Just refine until your energy and your expression match. So let's look at what harmony sounds like in practice. Instead of saying, build your sovereign business container, try saying, build your sovereign business container, a structure that lets you serve deeply, charge elegantly, and create more income with less chaos. Now it expands, now it lands, and now it paints a picture of possibility. And maybe instead of saying, calibrate to your next frequency of leadership, you might want to say, calibrate to your next frequency of leadership, where your boundaries hold, your message magnetizes, and your influence expands naturally. The first version makes people think. The second helps them feel themselves inside your vision. And that's the alchemy of communication, where language doesn't just sound beautiful, it becomes transformational. Because when people both understand you and feel you, Trust is built instantly. And trust is what turns energy into enrollment. Clarity doesn't reduce your magic, it amplifies it. It's the bridge between your essence and their embodiment. The most magnetic leaders in this space aren't the ones who sound the most spiritual. They're the ones whose energy and clarity are indistinguishable, who make people feel safe, seen, and certain. So here's your invitation. Keep the beauty, keep the depth, and keep the soul, but make it land. Because when your energy has words and your words have clarity, that's when your message doesn't just inspire, it transforms. And when your words land, when your energy and clarity finally meet, something shifts. Your message stops floating in the ethers and it grounds itself. It stabilizes your business, your confidence, and your connection with your audience. And that's when you realize clarity isn't the opposite of energy. It's what energy looks like in form. You no longer second guess yourself or chase engagement or over-explain what you do. You simply speak and the right people recognize themselves in your truth. Because clarity is not about streamlining your message. It's about giving your brilliance structure. Clarity is what happens when your nervous system and your message, they finally agree. When your words start connecting, when what you say and what you feel are fully aligned. It's the energy of, I know who I am, I know what I offer, I know who it's for. That's magnetic. It's certainty with soul-aligned wisdom, and that energy builds trust, the kind that converts. And one of my clients once said, when I finally stopped sounding only spiritual and started saying what my spirituality actually meant as lived experience, that shift brought more aligned clients than any launch strategy ever did for me. Because people can feel when you're clear. Clarity is the highest frequency there is. Truth spoken clearly. Here's something to try this week. Choose one piece of content, a post, your website headline, or your bio, and read it aloud and highlight every energetic word, frequency, embodiment, calibration, attunement, alignment, sovereignty, activation, whatever that spiritual word is that you're using. And then I want you to ask yourself, what does that look like in someone's real life? How does it shift how they show up, lead, or live? For example, frequency might mean feeling grounded when making financial decisions. Embodiment, it might mean having boundaries that finally match your values. Alignment might mean choosing offers that honor your energy instead of what's popular right now. Now, rewrite it with those specifics. You'll find your message sounds more human and far more powerful, because grounded energetic words are the ones that move people. You don't need to throw away the sacred words. You just need to give them context, a physical home. And you can still speak of frequency, embodiment, sovereignty, and any other spiritual word you love. Just show your people what they look like and feel like, because that's what leadership really is. It's translation, taking the invisible and giving it voice, form, and meaning. And that's how people can decide to hire you. That's how energy becomes evidence. And you're not here to only sound spiritual. You're here to bring understanding to your spirituality. And when you're understood, your message becomes unstoppable. So this week, I want you to listen to your own words and ask yourself, do those words land? Am I speaking from clarity, or do my words sound vague? Am I saying what I truly mean or what I think sounds good? You don't need to choose between your depth and your delivery. You just need to bridge them, your spiritual words with context that offers both energy and solutions. So your language, it carries your vision and the people it's meant to reach. And when your words carry both soul and precision, they don't just inspire, they transform. If this conversation spoke to you, explore Sanctuary 33, my private membership for leaders who are ready to build the next chapter of their wealth with elegance, clarity, and purpose. You can find all the details at conniegrant.com or in the show notes. So until next time, lead with grace, speak with truth, and let your message land.